At what point do we start considering alternatives and then act on them? Lately, I've been questioning capitalism, as well as my role in it as a creative communicator. Here's what I've discovered. Capitalism is an economic and political system that is based on the private ownership of the means of production and their operation for profit. Growth is imperative to keep the capitalist system running, and the benefits of mounting profits are seen mostly by a small group, while most people end up selling their labor for a wage to support themselves. Capitalism is so encompassing in our current society that it's difficult to consider its absence. American philosopher Frederick Jameson once said, "It's easier to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism." But now that we are facing the end of the world, I'm starting to imagine if we could live better lives under an alternative economic system, because capitalism seems to be destroying our planet, as well as our enjoyment of life. So I started looking at how past pre-capitalist societies lived to see if there's an alternative way forward. Let's take a look. As it turns out, societies across the world practice alternatives to capitalism for thousands of years. We'll be focusing on the birthplace of popular capitalism, Europe. To better understand the Western world pre-transition, peasant families in the 1300s and 1400s Great Britain lived in egalitarian and cooperative communities. Commoners were farming their own lands and had free access to the commons, a place where animals could graze and people could hunt game, along with the opportunity to catch fish and use waterways for irrigation. In these communities, they practiced forms of animist religion, which was the idea that all living beings are interconnected and contain a soul-like essence. Animism dictated how peasants interacted with the natural world. In many ways, they treated the land like a family member, whom they cared for, and in return, cared for them. They would only take what they needed and what they knew would be renewed. So if this society was thriving, why did it end in 1500? Well, after the feudal system was overthrown, the nobility who once controlled the labor and the land were angry that the peasants were no longer obedient to them. And the church was resentful that their religious leaders were no longer supported financially by the class system that exploited over 90% of England's population. These two entities teamed up to change perspectives of how humans interact with nature. See, both groups had something to lose from peasants holding on to animist ideals. The church didn't like that people believed that non-human objects had souls worthy of worshipping, as this challenged the idea of the all-powerful and singular God they spoke about. Capitalists saw the connection people had to their land and other natural objects as a threat because peasants would be hesitant to exploit the land for profit if they saw the world as a living thing with a soul. Carolyn Merchant reflects on this idea in her book, The Death of Nature. She says, as long as the earth was considered to be alive and sensitive, it could be considered a breach of human ethical behavior to carry out destructive acts against it. Dualism was to be the next big thing, and the dream team, capitalists and the church, were on a campaign to change the minds of millions of peasants. Dualism is the idea that humans are not a part of nature, but rather above it, because of distinctive characteristics like self-consciousness. By the 1500s, dualist enthusiasts had crushed the widespread support of animism. As people began to shift perspectives about their place in nature, a similar shift was happening in land management, from commons to enclosure. Enclosure refers to the process of privatizing common lands and removing commoners' rights to access and benefit from the natural resources of the land, usually in order to maximize economic productivity. Philosophers like John Locke agreed that the system of enclosure was like theft from the commoners, but that it was morally justifiable given the productivity of agricultural output. With this logic, increased productivity and improvement of production became a rationalization for the destruction of commonly owned land. The expansion of the capitalist system relied on the profits extracted from newly enclosed land, and when those resources ran out, colonizers enclosed the land and people of the global south. Fast forward 500 years, and capitalism is the status quo, along with the belief that man is above nature and is justified in exploiting it for economic growth. Our global economic culture measures success based on levels of growth, because growth is good, right? Flowers grow, and trees grow, babies grow into adults, but in all of these scenarios, there's an endpoint to the growth, a plateau that our economic structure does not share. Under capitalism, GDP is expected to grow by 3% each year to maintain large corporations' aggregate profits, and to provide interest payments to their shareholders. 3% growth means the doubling of the global economy every 23 years. The Earth cannot indefinitely support this exponential growth. To try and maintain this growth, corporations must take more from nature and labor than they give back, and exploit people and enclosed lands to keep costs low. The interests of citizens are cast aside as wages are cut, environmental protection is limited, and public services are privatized to allow corporations to grow their profits. Economists who still hold on to dreams of solely switching to renewable energy to power green growth do not account for the reality that growing GDP means expanding our energy use at a pace that renewables cannot keep up with. Since 2000, we have increased our production of clean energy by 8 billion megawatt hours a year, but economic growth has increased energy demand by 48 billion megawatt hours a year. Hopes of green growth are a pipe dream that distracts us from the reality of needing to reduce economic growth to also reduce resource and energy use. And why put efforts in to grow exponentially if we don't need to? Since the 1950s in the US, the average income per person has quadrupled, but levels of happiness have plateaued and even declined in the last half-century. The US has a GDP per capita of about $70,000, but as one of the richest countries, it still falls behind on many indicators of human welfare, like life expectancy, education, democracy, and life satisfaction. Do you know what does improve lifespans and happiness? Universal welfare systems. We see the success of a more egalitarian society evident in Germany, Sweden, and Costa Rica. All of these countries have significantly less GDP per capita than the US, but their residents are supported by universal healthcare, free education, and affordable housing. With the government ensuring residents' basic needs are met, people can focus more on enjoying life. Imagine all people having time to find joy and fulfillment in life instead of struggling to survive. What an amazing alternative. A degrowth economy reduces material and energy usage and instead prioritizes human welfare and ecological protection. Along with improving lives, creating more egalitarian societies can also reduce consumption. And that's the key. Consuming fewer materials and resources leads to less energy used to create and transport products, and less labor needed to create products that will be out of trend and thrown out in a few short years. Degrowth is the most straightforward solution to combating the climate crisis. And yes, switching economic systems is a lot. This shift, however daunting though, is absolutely possible, and people and organizations are already in the process of making this a reality. For degrowth to succeed, industries that have been a part of maintaining and promoting capitalism need to switch sides. Historically, advertising has played a pivotal role in promoting and driving growth, convincing people to buy more and creating a culture of consumption. It shouldn't just be on governing bodies to decide how advertising works. It should be up to us in the industry to make these decisions for ourselves. The advertising industry in the US employs 267,000 creative communicators, many of whom still use their skills to sell products in the name of growing profits for large corporations. As I wonder how we can tackle the climate crisis, I've looked closely at how my role in advertising is negatively affecting the world. Wouldn't it be better to creatively communicate about projects and actions being taken to correct our past mistakes? This isn't a video asking you to buy less, because the social issue of overconsumption doesn't lie in the individual. Instead, I'm asking us to please stop encouraging others to buy more. These creative skills we have could be harnessed instead to create change. If you want to take a professional stand against the destructive cycles of economic growth, consider allocating your talent to anti-capitalist brands and communication projects. Degrowth brands like Early Majority are taking strides towards creating a company that isn't motivated by growing profits. Instead, they make products that can be used for a lifetime and offer membership programs to incentivize the repair and reuse of their garments. Your creative skills also don't require you to stay in advertising. Get curious and consider what impact you could have as a climate communicator, or working for an environmental nonprofit, or even working in communications for a government environmental protection agency. Philip Kotler, who was regarded as the father of modern marketing, recently changed sides to join the degrowth community in identifying advertising as the driver of destructive economic growth. He says, transitioning to slower growth is the answer, with the aim is to embrace a more sustainable and equitable path of growth. If jumping ship seems too daunting, try speaking up about cutting ties with high-carbon clients like fossil fuel companies, petrol and diesel engine cars, and aviation. The collective Clean Creatives supports PR and ad professionals in pledging to refuse to work for fossil fuel polluters and provides resources for creatives to understand the impact of advertising for these high-polluting corporations. Agencies hold the power in many ways by choosing which clients to work with and by setting the price for the work they do. Charging more for a client with environmentally damaging production processes could motivate them to clean up their act. In the end, we know that an alternative path forward is possible. Past and current non-capitalist societies have created economic systems that reflect their appreciation and respect for the earth, and in many cases, the population and planet were the better for it. When we start to question capitalism and imagine alternatives, we step outside of the predetermined destiny of our declining planet. Using our creative talent for good can make change happen.